Okay, I wanted to probably make a short talk today. We'll see how it goes. But the subject matter is I've been working on this concept that I felt like I was unable to teach, or that I was advised not to teach by God. But I did send out my writings to a few people, and it's in regards to Brahman. Shall I say the ultimate reality, which is nothingness, and how it relates to us personally. Now, maybe I'll make the next several videos on this topic, because as I think of them, I will just simply make a quick video on it. But more importantly, I'm thinking about how you personally interact with, shall I say, yourself. I'm going to, first off, what I'd like you to do is sit back and not be critical of how I'm communicating. And I'm not saying that because I don't want you to criticize me, but I'm saying it because I lack the super ability to communicate maybe like a well-polished speaker and stuff. And I'm doing the best I can, and it's very difficult for me personally. That's all I'm saying. So, and this is incredibly important material for you to understand. Even after enlightenment, this is extremely difficult to understand. It requires paradigms, all kinds of thinkings. And the reason I say it's difficult is because there are incredibly well-known gurus in the world today alive, as well as those that have passed on thousands of years ago. And we read their writings and listen to the living gurus that misunderstand the concept of self, Atman, and how it relates to Brahman. And they screw it up all the time. And so that's what I am trying to clarify in your head so that you can understand the proper meaning. Now, how I'm going to attack this is a common teaching in Christianity as well as Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, all the teachings everywhere. It is a common misconception of surrendering yourself to God, as if God wanted you to surrender, or as if you had any choice available to you that you actually could surrender, because you can't. You do not have, your Atman does not have the ability to surrender itself, not only to Brahma or Christ or Satan. You cannot sell your soul to the devil any more than you can surrender yourself to God. If the people that taught that concept understood what they were saying, they would never say it. Because your essence, your, I'd like to say soul, because that's another often misunderstood concept. Because in reality, you do not have a soul any more than you have a body. Because all there is Brahman. There is no soul. There is no nothing. But Brahma has created a vehicle for all of your awareness to contain itself in a single location so that you can communicate as an intellectual, intelligent being upon a spiritual plane of existence. And that container is called a soul. But Brahma has created the soul. And so Brahma has created it through his, her, its imagination. From love, by the way. Giving you a place to store all your proclivities, all your wisdom and intelligence, and the manifestation of what the essence of your soul is. I know I'm rambling, but try to stay with me on this, because as I said initially, this is so difficult for people to wrap their heads around. It is beyond difficult to wrap their heads around. But if you get it, it's kind of simple to understand if you could get it. So when I say you cannot surrender to God, and when I say free will, for instance, people say free will as if it is something that has been given to you or whatever. But the concept, or if you think of free will as something tangible, free will is what you are. You could actually use the term Atman, or you could substitute the word Atman for free will. They're both one and the same, actually. You could take Brahma and substitute the word Brahma for free will. It is one and the same. Free will is an attribute of duality. So people say they would, when I say people, not generally speaking, gurus, teachers that are assumed to be intellectual or intelligent enough to understand this, act as if you could lose your free will, or that you would have your free will subverted for the will of somebody else. No. Everyone at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the beginning of time to the end of time, from before time and after time, have within their own priority, their own pre-existing from before time, from before Brahma, free will. You cannot give it away. Think of this. Maybe this would help your paradigm shift. Think of this. If a person is going to surrender to God, if a person is going to lose their free will, who is taking that free will? Who is accepting that free will? Who is accepting the surrender? How is it possible you can surrender? Now, this all goes back to Brahman. I put an emphasis on man only because I'm trying to distinguish the difference between Brahma and Brahman. I kind of wish there was a different word to be used. For Brahman, a lot of times I say the God that Jesus prayed to. Anyways, even now as I'm talking to you, the reason I'm not being extremely fluent is because my brain is like a machine and there's smoke coming out of it because it's spinning so hard and so fast, trying to use or think of or come to some sort of words to define what I innately know. I mean, like, I don't know where this knowing is. It's in my essence. It's in my soul. It's wherever it is. It's crystal clear to me. It's not like I have difficulty understanding it. What I have is difficulty expressing it in words. That's what I have. Anyways, you have to hold Atman and Brahman. You have to have, I'm looking at my own hands. I'm looking at my camera. You have to have yourself here. And then here you have to have Brahman. And it doesn't matter that we can say they're one and the same. It doesn't matter about that. You have to think them separate. This is getting back into the epistemological understanding of what is it? The epistemological understanding of Advaita, which I've never found anyone that fully understands it correctly yet alive today. But if you have that understanding where it's not duality and it's not non-duality, but for the purpose of trying to express it right now, you have both Atman and you have Brahman. And in that, you have to go simultaneously. You have to think of it and go, okay, if everything is Brahman, how do you move from one point in Brahman to another point in Brahman? You can't. It's impossible. If you have a zero, for instance, there's nothing. It's called zero. How do you move from one point in zero to another point in zero? Well, you can't. And yet, people say, because they're deeply confused, they say, well, you need to surrender to God. That's like saying you're going to go from this point in zero to that point in zero. How is it possible to surrender to God when there's no one to surrender to? You could say, well, because Brahma loves me, so I have to surrender to God. But you're conflicted. Even the non-duality people are conflicted because everything is zero. And then they're teaching you, well, everything is one. Well, if everything is one, how can you surrender? Who are you surrendering to? And we can take that a step further, or parallel would be a better way of looking at it. And you lose your free will to Satan because you've sold your soul to Satan. People say that. How is that possible? How is it possible to sell your soul to Satan when it's zero? How do you take this part and put it over here? I know this sounds confusing or as if I'm confused. I assure you I'm not confused. If you can understand that and hold at the exact same time in your mind duality, then maybe you might get closer to busting open the spiritual concept of enlightenment. You might be starting to get there if you can start to understand these things. Your essence Your Atman is 100% of the time in control of itself. It cannot surrender that control to something else because everything is a zero. What is it going to surrender to? I keep saying the same thing, but I'm trying to make it crystal clear to you, because when I say that, your brain shifts and goes, oh, okay, yeah, well, sure, you can't surrender to anything. But at the same time, I speak of duality, because the essence of what you are is always in control. It's like, I know this is a temporary understanding, but if it weren't temporary, you could have the sun, for instance. It's always putting out light. It's always putting out heat or energy. And it never stops. And if your Atman was considered a sun, it is always in control. Nothing is going to stop that. Maybe that's a bad analogy because a sun is temporary. It's going to eventually be destroyed. But you can never be destroyed. Even if at the end of a kalpa of time, you are not one with God and you revert back to Brahman, does that mean you're destroyed? No, not at all. You just cease to exist within the creation of Brahma. That's, I hesitate to say that's all that happens, because that's a monumental thing. But you cannot be destroyed. Your Atman cannot be destroyed. That's like saying, well, we're going to destroy Brahman. That would be ludicrous in any teaching anywhere to say that Brahman could be destroyed or eliminated. So the concept of Christianity, you burn in hell for all eternity, that's another ludicrous statement. Because first off, if there was a hell, who's going to maintain that hell? Since we, when I say we, you and I, since we know that reality is created by and maintained by Brahma, the God that Jesus prayed to, why would this God maintain for all eternity a hell where everything is burning and all this kind of stuff? That's crazy to even think that this God would do such a thing. If you are not one with this God at the end of a kalpa, you simply go back to your original state of being, which is Brahman. That's all there is. Another way of saying, well, what is Brahma? You could say Brahma is awareness. That would probably be the most accurate definition of Brahma, awareness. But it's a rudimentary, because you have to add more to that. The epitome of love would be another definition of Brahma. But that's only from my perspective. Others see Brahma as a authoritarian or whatever. I could say that they are ignorant, that's why they see it that way. But that's not entirely true either. Since everyone is the creator of their own reality, they have to be. Think about that. Everyone has to be the creator of their own reality, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be here right now. Because again, we're getting back to that dual concept of Brahman and Brahma. And when I say Brahma, as soon as you say the word Brahma, you have to include essences, Atmans. You have to include the multitude of other gods, of other awarenesses. And people can lump them all into one and say, well, everything is one. But again, that's an ignorant understanding of what Brahman is, because Brahman is zero. You cannot create a one from a zero. It's not possible. This is a paradigm requirement to understand this. It even to my hearing of my own words, it sounds like gobbledygook. Like, how can you make sense of that? Even my brain says that. And yet I know what it is. And that's why I'm saying these sorts of things. All right, I think I'm going to cut this video short because it's just something I thought of. And I'm working on trying to help you understand what you are, essentially. Anyways, I love you very much. You personally are the only thing in existence. Now you could say, well, there's a universe and there's worlds and there's planets. Yeah, but they're all illusory. They're not real. The only thing that's real is you, your essence. That's the only thing that's real. People could reduce that and say, well, what you are is awareness. Okay, you can synonymously say awareness, Atman, you personally, what you are. But that's the only thing that's real. It is the only thing that can return its awareness to Brahman when the kalpa of time is over. There isn't anything else that returns to Brahman because everything else disappears. It is like the snake seen in the dimly lit room in a coiled rope. You know that teaching. Does the snake return to Brahman? No, because there never was a snake. There was a rope, but the rope is an illusory reality. So it too is like the snake, because it returns. So what is actually left standing when everything else is eliminated? Yourself, your awareness, the thinking of what you are. And the reason you don't know what you are is because you are in the process of creating yourself. God, Brahma, the God that Jesus prayed to, is not in the process of creating himself. He is in the process of helping create you by creating this. I hope that makes sense to you. I love you, and I will be making another video next week. Have a good week. Bye.